Hey guys, Jay here. So today we're taking a look at that $2,000 to $3,000 price category when it comes to speakers. And there's a lot of speakers in that price category that is pretty darn good. And I have reviewed a handful of those. But right off the bat, subjectively and objectively, in my opinion, this is one of the speakers that is a real killer, providing incredible value for only $2,050 US at the time of this video. Now, I specifically say at the time of this video because the price is about to increase on August 15th. So make sure to watch this video fully because as with any speaker, it may be nearly perfect, but it is not perfect. So if you remember my review of the Arendal 1723 THX floor standing loudspeakers, that speaker, I coined it the true giant killer on my title. And if I can call any product, including amplifiers, speakers, preamplifiers, integrated amplifiers, you name it, any product that has come in here that I can call a giant killer, it would be that speaker. It has also won the best value product of the year for the last 2 years on my channel. And only one speaker wins that award the entire year. So it's not an award that I keep handing out to every speaker out there. So in that price range, for me, the Arendal 1723 THX floor standing speakers really punched above its weight, competing with speakers in the $20,000 price category like the Wilson Audio Sabrinas. And as for the speaker in question today, the Arendal 1723 THX S monitor, this speaker has a lot of high quality stuff that you will see in much higher priced speakers as you did with the Arendal 1723 THX floor standers. But it costs way less at $2,050 and it's not a floor stander, but a monitor. In fact, the S stands for slim or small, I believe, and it's actually the slimmer or smaller version of their bigger monitor. Now, I also have that monitor in, and I have compared both of them, and I'll say it right off the bat here, I personally prefer the S monitor, even compared to their bigger monitor, and this one's a tough one. In some ways, not all, but in some ways, I actually prefer the Monitor S even compared to the almighty floor stander of the 1723 series. And the slim version here uses two 6.5-inch woofers and a 1.1-inch soft dome tweeter in a waveguide. And this waveguide is key. As you can see here, the off-axis response on the speaker is phenomenal, and that waveguide helps with that. And that's particularly awesome because the sound that you hear in your room is not just the sound that's coming from the speakers, but also the sound that is radiating from the speakers to the side walls, bouncing off and then coming back to your ears. So you're hearing a combination of those sounds. So you ideally want the horizontal off-axis to be similar to the on-axis response of the speakers so that the tonality you hear is as close as it is to the sound that is coming from the speaker itself. And so the waveguide helps with that, the directivity and the dispersion pattern of the loudspeaker. But not only that, a properly designed waveguide allows the tweeter to be crossed over lower to the woofers. So in this case, it's crossed over at 1,500 Hertz, which is fairly low. And that's particularly awesome because a tweeter is going to be inherently better at handling those upper, higher end cycles. And subjectively, you're going to hear more nuance, more detail, more transparency. And as an audiophile, you're going to be able to hear into those more fine details of the music that you enjoy with much more cleaner dynamics and detail retrieval with better nuance and more delicateness. And you're gonna also see that on the vertical off-axis response as well. So this is basically a simulation of, let's say, if you get up from the chair and you stand on top of the speakers, what would it sound like? And as you can see, for the most part, as long as you are in that plane of the loudspeaker, you are fine. The frequency response does not change much at all. But ideally, you want to be on the axis of the tweeter. So you want the tweeter to be at the ear level for that perfect on-axis response. But even if you're not perfect, it's going to be pretty fine. The only thing is that if you start to move away from the plane of the loudspeaker, so you're standing on top of the loudspeaker, let's say you're standing up, moving around, then you start to see that dip around that crossover point at about 1,500 Hertz, and that's going to be not ideal. So let's say you're sitting in a home theater seat and you have your seats way up, then that's going to be a problem because now you're sitting above the speaker's plane level. So in those cases, what I recommend is kind of towing the speakers back so that the tweeter is facing upwards if you have a situation like that. But for the most part, just the right stand with a proper sitting position is going to do you just fine with this loudspeaker. It is very, very good in terms of its horizontal and vertical off-axis response. And talking about technology packed into this speaker, this is a ported and also a sealed enclosure design, meaning it does have two 1.5-inch ports in the back, and it does come with foam plugs so that you can plug it to make it a sealed design. And you can see the result of that here. So without the foam plugs, you're gonna be hitting about 75 Hz at f3, which means it's the -3 decibel point of the speakers. And if you use the foam plugs, as you can see, you're gonna get less bass output and less bass extension. And that may be more ideal, let's say if you're mounting the speakers onto the wall, or which you can with the speaker, or let's say you will have it very close to a wall, you have no other choice, then you can do that. Now you might say, well, 75 Hz at f3, that is not a lot of bass extension. And you're right, but also I have two things to say to that. One, subjectively, when I put the speaker into my room, because of the room gain, I get tons of dynamic bass, unbelievable. And actually when I measured the speaker, I was quite surprised by the fact that this only went down to 75 Hz at f3. And second, I will say this. This speaker is made for multiple kind of configuration, meaning it is designed to be able to put onto the wall as an on-wall speaker, but it's also for home theater as well. And 75 Hz is plenty, especially if you consider adding subwoofers. And that is exactly what I did for that low frequency region. I added two Arendal 1S subwoofers, and that filled it in very nicely, and I got this amazing bass extension as well. But when it comes to that bass region, I would say just under that like 40 Hz region, I would say I'm getting plenty of bass in my room in a real life situation. But again, the measurements show that it's at 75 Hz at f3. So depending on the room, if you have a huge room, you definitely want to add a subwoofer with this speaker. Now, the finish on the speaker is absolutely phenomenal. If you remember, I had the white gloss finish on the Arendal 1723 THX Tower speakers, and this time I got it in kind of like a matte black finish. And on both of them, the spectacular build quality. And I'm not just talking about the aesthetics, which I love, but just the build quality itself, the finish quality itself. And I say that because I've had this speaker for a long time now, and admittedly, I've had times where I was measuring the speaker and I thought, oh, darn it, I scratched it. Or I put something on it and then I'm like, dang it, I must have made watermarks on it or whatever. So I've had situations where this speaker was exposed to situations where it could be scratched, scraped, dropped, and I have in fact dropped this speaker. Sorry, Arendal. But somehow, miraculously, the finish never got scratched or even dented. And so I thought that was worth noting because as the user, I was just so appreciative of how well built and finished this loudspeaker is. And talking about that, the cabinet itself is made out of HDF, which as I mentioned before, is a material that is used maybe on some higher end speakers. In my personal opinion, MDF is perfectly fine, it's perfectly suitable. But HDF is taking just one step further and is something I would use if I was designing a more higher end speaker. And in this case, talking about a speaker at $2,050 US with an HDF cabinet, well, that's impressive. Now, despite this, it wouldn't mean anything if it had resonance and all sorts of issues with ringing of the cabinet and stuff like this. What is the point? Now, thankfully, as you can see, it is a very inert cabinet and there is virtually no resonance to be seen on this speaker. Now the quality does not end there. You also get a rhodium plated copper binding post terminals and these feel and look high end. You know, binding posts I would expect to see on a $20,000 loudspeaker. Yeah, no joke, that's what I would expect to see on a $20,000 loudspeaker, and that's kind of the terminal feel and quality that you get on this loudspeaker. Now, my only gripe with this loudspeaker in terms of its build quality and feature is the size and the shape of this loudspeaker. Because it's a monitor speaker with an MTM design, it's a bit awkward to find the right stand for it that will look nice. Now, don't get me wrong, any stand will do. It's just a matter of aesthetics, and it's a shame that Arendal doesn't have a matching stand with these kind of monitors. In the future, I hope they come out with one because honestly, any stand will work, like I said, but finding the right one that will make it look nice is a bit of a challenge. But at the very minimum, I want to say this. Arendal's customer service is one of the best I have seen in this industry, with 10-year warranty on their speakers and a 60-day trial period. So if you see this video and you're like, wow, that sounds amazing, and you get it, and you don't like it, you have 60 days to decide for yourself. That's some crazy confidence right there, but it's not hard to see why. Now, in terms of sound quality, I absolutely love this speaker a lot. This speaker has almost the perfect tuning that I would look for in a loudspeaker, both for music and home theater. First of all, as you can see, it has a pretty flat response, and then as you get to that upper mid-range area, it kind of lowers a little bit by a few dB, and then it comes back up at the higher frequency. And this tuning sounds absolutely phenomenal to me, and especially because that tweeter is handling those upper mid-range frequencies as well. You get this all the really nice nuance and delicacy and that full mid-range presence. But the high frequency, the upper mid-range, which can be a little bit forward sounding and bright on some speakers, is non-existent. I can crank the speaker up really loud and I still get all the nuance and detail. Just the perfect balance of that upper mid-range is what makes this speaker truly special in my opinion. Not only that, when you get to the higher frequency, you can see that it kind of goes up a little bit. Now, people often ask me, what do you mean by this airy presence that you talk about on your videos? And that airiness is not just a word for kind of, audiophile jargon, so to speak. It is, but at the same time, it's a real thing. For example, I can increase the air of my audio right now, and you can probably hear it if you're wearing headphones or even on, your phones maybe. But you can definitely hear that the overall spaciousness has increased while my tone of my voice has not changed all that much. And that's because I increased the higher frequency only, and that is where the air, so to speak, exists. And that region, you don't really hear it, much like you don't hear the low frequencies of the bass. You feel it. It's kind of like that. You feel that airy kind of spacious presentation, and you get this with the speaker in spades because of this tuning. So the result of that is going to be the sweet, delicate sound, nuance that you can really hear into the music, almost as good as a mini monitor level of detail and nuance. At the same time, the bass is very dynamic. That mid-bass region, very punchy, very quick, very dynamic, and it's just very effortless in that bass presentation. Now, yes, if you're a bass head and if you really value extension of the bass where you can feel the bass down to the 20 Hz region, feel it in your bones kind of thing, then you definitely want to add the Arendal 1S subwoofers, which matched perfectly with the Monitor S. But honestly, 100% honestly speaking, I know the 75 Hz at F3 value sounds like this speaker has no bass whatsoever. That is not the case. When you put the speaker into a room, that mid-bass region is absolutely dynamic and punchy and even will please the bass heads out there. But the extension, yes, that's something to be desired on this loudspeaker, and that's something that you get on the floor stander that you don't get here, that you might want to augment with a subwoofer. And actually, for some, this may be a better choice, especially if you're very finicky about the bass amount you want in your system. Then this may be a better choice because, again, with a floor stander, you're kind of set on the bass response that's given to that floor stander, and you kind of have to love it or hate it. But with this, because you can augment with a subwoofer, you can adjust the level of the bass and the placement of the subwoofers to better suit your room. So this may be a better choice for some that wants more flexibility in setting up that bass perfectly. Now, in the beginning of this video, I have mentioned that I particularly like something about the speaker more than even the Tower variant, and that is soundstage and imaging. Now, if you remember my Tower review, my criticism with that speaker was that the soundstage wasn't as big because it's a big loudspeaker, you get scale and dynamics, but you might want to use a tube amplifier if you want to open up that soundstage a little bit. Otherwise, the soundstage was pretty restricted to the plane of the loudspeakers. Well, with this S monitor, that is not the case. You get this wide projection of sound and deep projection of sound, but with very good attack and decay structure. And you get this amazing imagery, singer's dead point center, phantom center intact, all the side imaging, all the nuances. Again, because that tweeter is handling those upper frequencies, you get this beautiful nuance in the vocals, clarity, and just a beautiful layering of sound from you to the speakers. So it's almost a very atmospheric and involving sound while retaining clarity in the dynamics and in the high frequency as well. And talking about the bass a little bit more, because I just love the bass on this loudspeaker, the bass is very clean and fast sounding, but it's not so fast or so clean that it sounds clinical and, ripped of its kind of textures, right? We've all had that experience before where we heard a very fast sounding speaker, but it sounded lifeless and dead in the bass. That is not the case with the speaker. It's just fast enough so that you'll be like, wow, that is impressive, that is fast. But it's not so fast that it feels like the song is going faster or it sounds wrong. On the other hand, it's not so slow that it feels sloppy. And overall, it's just the right amount of speed and attack and decay and punch and dynamics and cleanliness, in my opinion, in that bass region, which was particularly to my taste. Now I have tried a variety of amplifiers to see which one I like best. And so I tried the Galleon TSA75, the Adcom 555MS, the Ultra Audio Star Crimson, and my reference Audion monoblocks in the new gorgeous custom copper finish. And I also tried some tube integrated amplifiers like the Brunico Terra, as well as the Cayenne Jazz integrated amplifier. And while I tried other preamplifiers that we'll talk about in a minute, I mainly used the DMP A8 as a preamplifier or a fixed output so that I can use both integrated amplifier and amplifiers with just this unit to keep things consistent. Now, right off the bat, I'll say this. If you want bass dynamics out the wazoo with this loudspeaker, I would go for the Thomas & Stereos amplifier, the Galleon TSA75. And that was a phenomenal pairing, and the amplifier being only $1,500, this was an absolute steal of a combination. Really good, really amazing bass authority. The only thing is that the soundstage is pulled back a little bit and you might not like that. But personally for me, it gave me more depth and layering to the sound, which I personally thought was more musical. Now, if you're in a home theater setting, maybe this combination won't be the best since you want those dialogues to be more poppy and more in front of you. So something to consider, but that pairing, if you're on a budget, absolutely phenomenal. However, also keep in mind that this speaker does dip down below 4 ohms on some frequencies, whether it's ported or sealed. So definitely not the best option for an old receiver that cannot handle 4 ohm impedance loads. So if you're using this for home theater, most modern receivers will be able to handle 4 ohm loads, and you can check that with your manufacturer before getting this loudspeaker. But this loudspeaker does need some power to drive it, and definitely competent power as well. And that's why the 75 watts on the Galleon TSA A75 in a small to medium sized room, absolutely no problem. But if you're in a bigger room, you probably want more power, more handling than what the Galleon TSA A75 can provide. But on the other hand, getting this loudspeaker to loud level is not a problem because this speaker is sensitive at 88 dB in sensitivity at 1 meter, which means that you can crank this speaker pretty loud with just a few watts. And that's why I used the Brunico Terra integrated amplifier as well, and that was an amazing match, giving more life and fun sound to this loudspeaker. But it's gonna be an acquired taste. If you don't like more brilliance, if you don't like more air presence and spatial cues, just a little bit more in your face, but with great bass oomph as well, it's gonna be an acquired taste. It's not gonna be a more accurate sound than a solid state amplifier, but definitely more fun, engaging, and spacious sounding kind of type of sound. Now the only thing is that, like I said, with the Galleon, the Terra is no exception. you're gonna want a small to medium sized room for an amplifier like this powering this loudspeaker. In a larger size room, you might look at the Star Crimson from Orchard Audio, which provides plenty of Class D power that is state-of-the-art gauntlet design, and it's going to be a very fast, quick, accurate kind of sound. Whether you like that or not, that's up to you. But personally for me, I overall enjoyed the lovely balance of this loudspeaker. And because of the Orchard Audio's that little bit more brilliance in the upper mid-range that I talked about in that review, it pairs perfectly with the Arendal Monitor S here, because the Monitor S has the exact opposite kind of sound. It's more relaxed in that upper mid-range like I talked about. So you're not gonna get that kind of brilliance or sharpness or edgy kind of sound. It's gonna be more relaxed, easy listening, but again, not so relaxed that you can hear the nuances. Overall, it's gonna sound more balanced and neutral in your room, but without the hint of brightness or shrillness or forwardness that you might get from some loudspeakers out there. Now, if you want a Class AB amplifier instead of a Class D amplifier specifically, and you still value that neutrality that I'm talking about, then I would recommend the Adcom. The Adcom has plenty of drive and power to really drive the speakers to literally its maximum capability. It gets really loud, and I think that is perfectly going to be able to power this loudspeaker even in a large room. And if you need a little bit more power, but value again that neutrality and a little bit more faster attack and decay kind of structure, then I would recommend the Denafrips Thalo, as that was an incredible pairing both in soundstage depth and micro nuances, probably the best solid state pairing outside of the audience in my opinion with these loudspeakers. However, if you want even more of everything, then I would recommend my reference Audion monoblocks from AGD. And even though this is probably the smallest amplifier that you will find, this is going to power these loudspeakers with absolute ease, since all these Class D amplifiers are able to handle down to 2 ohm impedance loads. So it's gonna break no sweat in driving these speakers with accuracy, nuance, and a little bit more delicateness and musicality with a larger sound stage and a deeper and better layering to the sound. Overall, the full package in my opinion. But of course, there's a price tag to pay with the audience. And specifically with all the amplifiers, not the integrated amplifiers, while the DMP A8 preamplifier section with these were just perfectly fine and musical, I personally preferred a tube preamplifier like the Urich Motherload preamplifier or the A&K Mentor preamplifier. Of course, these are standalone tube preamplifiers, and therefore you're gonna end up spending more money. However, it just gave a more spacious and more liquid, more smooth presentation that to me sounded more musical and more enjoyable, and just overall something I would personally cater towards in my system if I were to keep these speakers as my reference. And talking about reference, yes, this is going to be my recommendation for that $2,000 to $3,000 price category for both home theater and music listening enjoyment. So that's pretty much it from me. I hope this video was helpful, enjoyable, and if it was, please click that like button. It helps my channel out greatly and it doesn't cost you anything. And I hope to see you guys in my future journey, my future videos. So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it, and I'll see you guys on my next one. Until next time.